All right. Hey, everyone. My name's Benjamin Tarsa. I'll be presenting today about, sort of a survival guide on marketing basics and release preparation. If you see me glancing over here, it's because my slides are showing up on my other monitor for some reason. Um, so without further ado, you're wondering, hey, who the heck is this guy? Um, I'm the director of business development for Indie.io. We're a publishing platform for indies. We have a large portfolio of games. We help indies of all different sizes at all different points in the game's life cycles bring their game to market, find as big an audience as possible. Um, Originally, I started my career building community websites like Gamepedia, which later was absorbed by Fandom, where I was the director of wikis. Um, Me and our co-founders left all that behind to come and publish games instead. Um, these days, I'm mostly looking to add games to our portfolio, but also find any kind of opportunities. I set up co-publishing deals and physical editions and humble bundles and all kinds of different stuff like that. And my street cred here is that I have shipped 150 games, 150 releases in the past 5 years. Probably more than that. That's not an exact number, but I've shipped a lot of games. And I've learned a lot while doing it. I'll start off by saying if you have any questions while I'm going through stuff, feel free to toss them in the chat. I may or may not answer them right away. I've got some time set aside at the end, but please feel free to go ahead and ask them because there may be cases where it's good for me to just to answer them during the presentation. So um, something I really want to start with because I think it's really important, especially for indies or and people who are working on their first game or maybe trying to take something like a jam game and release it on Steam, which is to figure out what does success look like for you. Um, I put some different sort of examples here. Some people are want to just make, hey, some pocket change. If I can make any money from this, 10K, that'd be awesome. Some people are like, hey, I want to get my name on the map. I want people to recognize, hey, this is my game, or get your studio on the map. Some people are like, hey, success for me looks like making $1 million. Um, Sometimes it's just like, hey, I just want to get a game on Steam for the first time and get that under my belt, and then move on to a different project. So success looks different for different people, and that's a good thing. So I think it's really a great idea to sit down and think about what success looks like for you, because that's going to help sort of, um, give you a nice goal to work towards without just having it be an open-ended thing of like, I hope my game blows up and we make $1 million, because that's a tough goal to have hanging over you, and it's be really easy to be disappointed um, if that's what you're sort of shooting for out the gate. Um, I always advise you should try and have like very reasonable expectations, but you should also just have a dream for what the best case outcome could be. Which doesn't have to be, shoot for the moon, but it could be like, hey, if this went really well, I could, uh, pay myself a salary for the next year to work on a game, something like that. Um, this is hopefully not too scary a chart, but I did want to include it. This is the average revenue for games released on Steam by percentile. So the whole left side of this, left like 50% of this bar is like hobby games, shovelware, stuff that of people who are basically like maybe not really intending, they're not putting stuff out there intending to make a lot of money. They're putting stuff out there because they just are trying to get their games out where they can be distributed. Um, but you'll see that, it takes the average revenue of $9,000 is about the top, is a little bit more than the top third of games. And you get way up into like the top 10% of games when you're talking about games that make $100,000 or more. So it's just good to keep in mind that there's a lot of competition out there. These things are all very achievable because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's just getting tossed out onto Steam. But it's a big pond to be swimming in for sure. Um, Turning more to just like marketing, when should we start marketing our game is a question that I've definitely heard before from indies. The answer is as soon as possible. The early bird gets the worm. You can see kind of this is a typical Steam followers chart. This is a game that has had its coming soon page on Steam for about 4 years. but you'll see that it's just kind of continued to drift upwards with some little bumps. That's usually when something happens, a demo or presence at an event or something like that. You really want to think about when is your game, when do you have enough that you can confidently show a clear promise of what your game is going to become. So for your Steam page, you want, you need up to 10 screenshots, preferably a trailer of some type. You need the description of the game. You probably want to put some animated GIFs in the description section. And you want to make sure that all of that is like representative of the game. So it's actually really good to keep in mind as you're developing that like that's a big milestone that you want to get to pretty much as soon as possible. And of course, you can always update that stuff later, but you want to put your best foot forward for sure. And so it's worth taking time to think about what is it that you're trying to present. And you really want to make sure you're thinking about what makes your game special. What is going to make people look at my game and go, oh, that's cool. I want to follow that. I want to, throw that on my wish list. So like the first 5 seconds of your trailer, really, really important, right? You want that to be something that's going to go, oh, cool. I see what this game's all about. How are you going to make yourself stand out? Think about the art you're using. Maybe you want to put a colored border around your capsule art so it stands out in search results. Making sure that it will look a little bit different or have something about it that's going to stand out amongst the crowd. Steam is really the center of the universe when it comes to PC games. I think everyone knows this, just how it is. So your Steam page and launching your Steam page is effectively the start of putting your game out into the world in most cases. And then you also just want to think about what's the promise that you're making to customers. Expectation setting is a key part of what your store page is doing for you. Your people are saying, here's what I expect this game to look like. This says it has these features. It looks like it plays this way. This is what the art style is. And you want to make sure that you're tuning that promise to what you're going to be able to deliver, because that's where when we see games come out and they don't match the promise of the store page, they're missing features that they said they were going to have, or maybe the art style changed, pretty radically. And, people who wishlisted it before that change are maybe like, whoa, this isn't the cool art style that I was into. So really trying to kind of keep those things in line. I would really like to introduce the concept of the marketing funnel for anyone who's never seen this before. This is kind of a slightly simplified version. There's other versions out there, but this is essentially when you're thinking about marketing, it's this big funnel. You've got everyone in the world up here, and then you really are trying to move people through this funnel down to the bottom. So, when we're thinking about game marketing, you're typically thinking mostly about these top three, right? So awareness is the top layer of the funnel. This just means someone's seen your game. So this is just making your game visible, whether it's through, advertising, social posts, participating in, showcases or Steam events, really just sort of putting the game in front of you, impressions. If you think about, all the ads you see on the internet, you see the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. You're not necessarily clicking on it or doing anything, but you're aware that that product or that brand exists. That's this layer of the funnel. The next layer is called consideration. So this is the idea that someone has clicked on your game. They've taken a look at it. Maybe they've wishlisted it. They've done something to move themselves a step forward towards purchasing, what you're making, to buying the game. And then, of course, once the game comes out, it's about conversion. So if you have 10,000 wish lists when you launch, you may only have 10% conversion, or you may have 30% conversion. The median is probably somewhere in the like 15 to 25 range, plus or minus, lifetime. But that's also really important, is thinking about, there are sometimes cases where maybe a lot of people are coming to your page to see it. And you can see these stats in the back end of Steam under the marketing data in Steamworks. Where lots of people are coming to the page, but few people are wishlisting. And that might be a signal to say, hey, lots of people are clicking on our capsule because they like our description or our art, but then they come to the page and they see something that they don't like, or they don't see something that they're expecting. And that's a sign that you maybe want to revamp things, change things up, because you want people to kind of go from that awareness, consideration, conversion. In this case, consideration is probably like 2 steps, right? It's kind of like, hey, I clicked through to come to the page, and then, hey, I wishlisted the game. Um, and then the deeper level layers of the funnel are like loyalty, advocacy. So this is people who review the game is probably actually a really good one. People review the game, join your Discord, retweet your tweets, tell their friends about the game, stream, all those sorts of things. Those are things that are sort of after people buy the game, continuing to get them, further and further down. So hopefully that's cool, but this is just a good way to think about anytime you're planning some kind of marketing activity, you can think, what am I trying to accomplish? Am I trying to move people from outside the funnel and make them aware of my game? Or am I trying to target people who are aware of my game and get them to, engage in consideration, to wish list, to visit the page, that sort of thing. What falls under marketing? It's a big umbrella. Any activity that moves people through that funnel is marketing. So that's your Steam page. It's interacting with your community on Discord. It's everything you do on socials. It's Steam Next Fest. It's going to events. It's doing paid advertising, social media advertising, things like that. My advice is to try everything that you reasonably can try and then reinvest where it's working, right? If you're posting on Instagram all the time, but no one's reacting to your posts, you're not growing your followers, stop spending time on Instagram. Twitter is still a decent place to be. X, I guess, fun. And TikTok is of course really big. Focus on your strengths. What are you good at? But also get out of your comfort zone, and be a fierce and passionate advocate for your game. Things that I see devs that go really well and work are people who I'll give an example from PAX East. I met some folks where they didn't have a booth. They weren't actually exhibiting, but they had printed off tons of little cards. They had their game on on their iPad, and they're basically just like grabbing people and like, hey, here's my game. Let me show it to you. Very guerrilla marketing. And I talked to them afterwards, and they said that was pretty successful for them. They did grow wish lists, they grow some interest in their Discord and things like that. Sometimes it's tough to say, hey, I got to take time away from developing my game to market, but you can't ignore marketing because it's the other piece of the puzzle. You want to put a significant amount of effort into marketing because making a great game is only half the equation. The best game in the entire world could fail to launch well on Steam because it didn't get the right exposure. I've definitely seen cases where a game, maybe it was great. I've seen a couple times where a game released on mobile and did really well on mobile. So the developer said, hey, I'll throw it on Steam. It should do pretty well there too. But, if you just launch a game on Steam, then if you launch a storage page and then a month later release your game, it's probably not going to do that great because you need that time to grow your followers, to grow wish lists so that the machine and the algorithm that drives Steam is going to pick up your game and show it to more people. Let's see. I talked about kind of trying to get out of your comfort zone. I know for a lot of developers, it's like, well, I'm not good at social media. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to post. And it is tough, but you're doing yourself a favor if you kind of take the time to get out of your comfort zone, look at what other people are doing, and shamelessly copy them. That's totally fine. And then just be consistent in posting on the channels that work for you. Building and leveraging your community is a big one. If you're on Discord, be active. Make sure you're posting. Make sure you're engaging people. Make sure you're sometimes just chit-chatting. You can have a big Discord, but if it's not very active and no one's actually there and paying attention to it and talking, then that's not as effective. You really want to keep your community as engaged as possible. And like I said, learn from others and collaborate. Reach out to other developers who have games like yours. Ask them, what they're doing. Hey, how can we work together? Can I promote your game? You promote my game. Can we, put little Easter eggs for each other's games? Or really anything. Or maybe do bundles on Steam at launch or after launch, things like that. take advantage of the great community that exists around, the indie scene. Things just sort of don't just expect that having a page on Steam is going to do all the work for you. It's not. Steam relies on inputs beyond just the page being there. It's about finding opportunities to be in events, to show your game elsewhere so that people come and look for it on Steam. Updating your store page as the game goes through development, because it shows that you're being active, you're actively marketing your game. So you really have to put in that work. Don't wait until it's close to release to start marketing your game. I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to developers and they're like, my game's basically done. I'm ready to launch in a couple of months. Can you help me get my store page up? And it's like, whoa, if your game's ready to launch and it's like, okay, now we should start marketing. You might not want to launch for another 6 months, right? Because you need that time. And a lot of people can't sit on their game for a long period of time like that. So make sure you're thinking about engaging in marketing activities as early as possible, like I talked about. Don't forget your store page. Don't forget to update it as the game develops, evolve. Make sure it's showing the latest and greatest. If you add some really cool shaders or you finish an awesome cutscene, like make sure to think about, hey, I should update those screenshots, add those to my store page. And the last thing I say is don't give up hope. There's always something else to try. There's always opportunities even after launch, to find ways to drive more people to your game. And there's always the next time. You're always going to be learning things and growing as you go through this journey. Let's see. Just some key targets and milestones. My presentation ended up being longer than I thought it was. Just want to put these out there so that you're aware of them, because these are some key things to just be thinking about in terms of like milestones while you're marketing. 6,000 or 7,000 wish lists. That's a pretty big one. This is what it takes to appear on the popular upcoming chart on Steam when like in the days leading up to your game's launch. If you can get to this 6 or 7K wish lists, you're pretty much guaranteed another couple thousand wish lists and a nice kind of push at launch. So it's like a really good like baseline target to be aiming for. Even if you're just trying to be have some modest success, this is like kind of a minimum you want to shoot for if you can. Your initial demo release, Steam has created some great tools. Whether or not you want to put it up as its own page or not, there's a lot you can read up on both sides of the arguments there. It's great to just tie that to something. Make sure you're applying to showcases. You're trying to show off your game for something like, let's say, the mix. It's actually a really good pitch to them to say, hey, we've got a brand new trailer and we're going to drop our demo for the first time. That's something that's going to be more interesting than just, oh, we have a new trailer or something like that. So think about how you can leverage stuff like your demo release. Then Steam Next Fest, which everyone knows about. Generally, you want to aim for the Next Fest that's just prior to your launch. But I will make the note that every time it just gets more crowded, more competitive, and it can be tough to break through. So while it used to be reliable to like, any game in Next Fest used to get a couple thousand wish lists, it's really kind of a sliding scale, and it kind of the curve has kind of expanded such that the biggest games are getting hundreds and hundreds of thousand wish lists, but there are games on the other side of the scale that are just getting a couple hundred. So you know. And then launch when you're ready or when you have to. It is an option to finish the game, but hold back on releasing so that you can focus more time on marketing, PR, and creator outreach, all those kinds of different things. But then there are cases where people can't do that. You're out of funding, you've got some other kind of deadline. And if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. Make the most of it. Try and plan the best possible launch around, those limitations. But make sure you're not I think some people feel like, oh, our game is finished, we have to launch it as soon as possible. And it's good to just take a moment to breathe and say, hey, what's the best plan to actually make a good launch for the game? Just a couple really good resources that I want to tell everyone should go sign up for these newsletters. There's no reason not to, and they are very, very good resources. One is the Game Discover Co newsletter by Simon Carless. It's focused on discoverability on all platforms, but he does a lot of deep dives into Steam and stuff. Steam, not Steve. Who's Steve? don't just read the new articles. I really encourage you to go back, look at old articles, search through his archives. Um, Also, if you subscribe to the premium, which I don't think is very expensive, it's like $5 or something. You only need to subscribe for 1 month. You'll gain access to all of his ebooks and stuff that he's put together, and those are like really amazing resources. I can't say enough good things about them. They're basically compendiums of all of the best of his the newsletter articles and deep dives and things like that. So 10 out of 10. I think this is a really great resource. How to Market a Game by Chris Zukowski. He's got a good site. He does some paid courses, but also has some free resources and a really good, again, blog, both the stuff that he puts out on a regular basis, but also just going back through. There's some really interesting. If you're interested in, Next Fest or what time of year to release your game, he's done deep dives into those things in the past, and they're really good things to read. There's a lot of great resources out there. Make use of them. And then last but not least, just some notes about release preparation. You want to choose a date that's good for you. And not worry too much. I sometimes hear have developers who say, "Oh, hey, the release date." It's usually us as publisher. We're sort of setting or proposing a release date. They say, "Hey, well, that release date is the same day that the next big Star Wars game is coming out," and I don't want to everyone will be playing that. There are tens of millions of people on Steam, and at the end of the day, you're not really competing with those games. We've never really seen that big AA, AAA games stop people from buying other games that are released at any given time. There are a couple exceptions. If I had a roguelike, I probably would not launch the same day as Hades 2. Hades disrupted the roguelike market for 9 months after it launched. Silk Song, I probably wouldn't release a Metroidvania, although who knows when Silk Song's actually going to release. But outside of those very specific cases, don't worry too much about what else is releasing and really focus on what's good for you. Ensure your game is prepared. There's QA, polish. Watch Chris's video. He's a really smart guy. I'm sure he's going to have lots of awesome things to say about that. Make sure the right build is on the default branch of Steam. Sounds silly, but it happens. Pricing, consider what's typical for games like yours and weigh that against your competitors. Cheaper prices sometimes mean you're going to sell more copies, but if it's super cheap, then you can sell tons of copies, but you're not making up the difference from a higher price. And if you're overpriced, you may not sell very many copies. So there's a balance there. It also is like your genre, right? It's tough if you've got a pixel art farming, cute, cozy farming sim game. Stardew Valley is sitting there at $14.99. It's tough to say, hey, people should pay $25 for my game. It's just an unfortunate reality of the market. But think about those factors when you're setting your price. Always have a launch discount. Don't do more than 10 or 20%. Probably 10% is adequate. You're always going to send out an email when your game launches, regardless of your launch discount. But as a note, for discounts after your launch, they have to be at least 20% to trigger your wish list. So once you've launched, you always want to do at least 20% discount. It never makes sense to do 10% discounts after launch. And then really important is to have 10 reviewers standing by. You want to hit up your friends, your family, your community members. One of the best things you can do for a game is to get it to 10 reviews. Hopefully they're all positive, or most of them are positive, as soon as possible. That creates a big jump in visibility. It enables getting onto new and trending on the main page. It's a really big thing. You should have 15 or 20 people kind of lined up in your pocket who are going to buy the game, play it a little bit, and then post a review as soon as humanly possible. You want to encourage your community to, hey, take a break, write a review about your initial experiences, then go back to playing. It's like the most important thing that people can do for you at launch is reviews. That said, don't buy reviews, don't fake reviews, don't ask people to create new Steam accounts just to leave a review, that sort of stuff. No good, don't do it. And just as a reminder, for reviews, you have to actually purchase the game. You can't give someone a key and review it. Those reviews, unfortunately, just don't count towards the rating. That's all I have for today. Are there any questions? I haven't seen anything in chat, but I'm happy to Happy to address if there's anything. A little bit of social media experience, but not a lot with marketing. How should I structure posts? I don't think that there's a huge distinction to be made there. Release schedules and texts. Um, I don't think there's anything super specific, right? You want to do it in a way that's going to be authentic to your voice and fits with, your community. So like, there's not really a specific, oh, I'm marketing, I have to change the way I do things. It's really just like, how is how do you want to announce it? What makes sense for your game? I'm not sure if hopefully that's kind of answers what you're asking. Um, but I don't think there's anything super specific. I think, the key in this day and age really is about being authentic to your voice and, your experience and, hey, we're a team of small developers, support our game, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Zane asks, when is the optimal time to begin marketing? I canceled out on my slide, but the answer is as soon as possible. As soon as possible, and as soon as possible, it basically means when you have enough to put together a Steam page that shows the real promise for what your game's going to become. So you need screenshots that you're happy with, that like you very intentionally are like, this is going to show off the best elements of my game, tell people what this game is all about, get them hooked if this is going to be their type of game. And go from there. And so it's good to be thinking about that as you're working on your game, because that's a first milestone. You may actually focus on certain things that you might not otherwise to get to that point, and then go back to some fundamentals after that. If you wait until the very end to add all your art, then it's tough to put a Steam page up. So sometimes you really just need to invest in doing some of that work earlier on. Caprani asks, tips for and do you recommend social media marketing on platforms you're not familiar with? Yes, that goes back to just my thought of be bold, try everything, and figure out what works. You know, it's worth trying new social media platforms. It's worth going to them, look at what other people are doing. How are other developers being successful on that platform? And then give it a try. If you try and you're making some posts and putting in effort, because it does take effort, especially with a platform you're not familiar with, but it's just not seeing any results, then, maybe that's not the best platform to focus your energy on. You'll find, we have some devs who just are really tuned into Twitter, really tuned into Discord, or really tuned into TikTok. And really wherever you're going to be comfortable and you're going to, create some content that people are responding to, that's the place to be. Double down on that. TikTok or YouTube? These days, TikTok. But if you're creating content for TikTok, you might as well post it on Meta Reels, and you might as well post it on YouTube Shorts. So if you're producing that kind of content, post it everywhere. All right, I think that just about covers everything. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining today. Make sure you look out for that video from Chris on Polish, and hope the rest of the jam goes really well for you.